Alrighty, looks like we're live. Looks like got the chat working. Okay. Let's do some painting. Let's fix this because it is not where I want it. Get a glove on. How's that looking? That looks okay. Get the glove on. There we go. That's probably a weird fucking noise to hear over the microphone. But whatever. So. Been a while since I worked on this guy. That can go over to the side. But. Done all this with the highlighting and shit. Done the wash over his green areas, so I think we're going to highlight the green areas. I'm going to have to start being a bit careful because I'm rubbing paint off. I'm expecting to rub it off at them, but there's spikes on there that we need to be careful about too. So, where are my brushes? Hiding up there. Whoop, don't drop them. Let's just get it over there. Grab a brush. Why? Why is it telling me my chat's disabled? Oops. Where am I? Oh, my browser address changed. That's all. That. And then that. And then that. There we go. Now I can see. I don't need you to be that big though. Oh, docky. There we go. Thank you. Ah, cool. Not screwing around with that stuff. Alrighty. So, I used Angel Green, and then I'm pretty sure it was Strong Tone. So, we're going to jump up next to Guardian Green, I think. Let me try to move my paint mixer away from the mic a bit further. Because when I reviewed the VOD of the last stream, that was really quite loud. And looks like my mic's still picking it up pretty fucking loud. Alright, I'll have to work something out for that. Fucking bug. It's back. Didn't I just kill you? Get off. Alrighty. So, as I said, Guardian Green, and we're just going to start some highlights here. Using a fairly big brush, because most of what we're working on is pretty big here. Just a little bit of water to water that down. Okay, well, let's just start up here and work our way down. There's something on my brush. Oh, there's a bit of fluff on it or something. That was weird. Alright. That's too watery. So we're just trying to avoid the recesses and picking out our highlights. Honestly, for doing these knuckles, I think I want a smaller brush. We'll keep the big brush to the side for the moment, but let's go down 2 spots. So that's a size 2 that I was using, except the numbers rubbed off. But anyway, I'm going to go down to a size 0, just for doing these knuckle parts. Just because there's all these creases and that we don't want the paint in. Wrinkles would probably be the better term than creases, but you meant what I know. I tried to set a new audio gate so it doesn't pick up everything like it was in the last stream, like my dog snoring or whatever. But I'm not 100% sure if it's always going to pick me up talking, so I'm hoping it'll be alright. So I just need to try keep a bit of a watch on it. But let me know what my audio is like. Always open to feedback. Now this is the first highlight, so we're hitting most of what's facing upwards. Sort of staying out of the deeper spots. Just starting to establish our highlights. Now, if you want to do this part quicker, you could definitely dry brush it, like the knuckles and stuff here. But some of it, like these in here, would be a little bit hard to get into with a dry brush. But it would be quicker than doing it individually like I'm doing. I do think doing it individually, or manually I guess maybe would be the better term, will give you a better result. But it really is a preference thing and a time thing. Not everyone's willing to spend the ridiculous amount of time I do on a model when it's for an army. I mean, I don't even actually spend that stupid amount of time on models. A lot of, you know, your bigger YouTubers, Ninjon, Squidbar, those guys spend way more time on their models than I spend on mine. The thing is, I'm painting armies, so like 4 hours for a battle line or something is pretty ridiculous when you need to do 30 or 40 of them for an army. But 4 hours for a one-off display model for a video or something, it's not that long. Don't drop your brush. Now for this, if I put it like that, you see like the bottom half is sort of facing downwards, so I'm not going all the way down. Just sort of, I'm going, because this is the first highlight, I'm sort of going to where it starts to curve under. So just after when you'd really think the shadows start showing, I like to go that little bit further. But that is a personal preference thing. I just think it gives more room for highlighting up later. And then in here, what are we going to do? I think this part's facing up a little bit. Let's hit him. Here. That part definitely. We'll go down a little bit there. Along the top here. Going down a bit. Just dodging those recesses. And this guy definitely. Dodge that recess there and that recess there. All these little texture bits, you just want to try to avoid them. If you can. Alright, I think. No, I haven't got there yet. But almost can go onto the bigger brush. Just finish the last of this off. This is facing up too. Let's get this knuckle under here. I should have changed this to like, let's paint Mutalith Vortex Beast for my Thousand Suns number 2. People might get confused when there's 2 streams named the exact same thing since I leave the fucking VODs up. And I should stop swearing. Alrighty, let's move on to the bigger brush now. Okay. Just as always, looking to pick out the stuff facing upwards. I'm just trying to avoid these recesses here, like the little pockmark spots. Leave them shadowed. And then let's just pull a little bit of this over here so I can water it down a little bit more. So I can just glaze up a bit. A little bit more. Just sort of glaze that, smoothing out that transition a little bit. Now this is one of those models that is going to take a long ass time to do all this highlighting. Because it's big and like, there's just so much sort of texture in that to work around. So I mean, as I said before on the knuckles, you could probably get away with dry brushing most of this texture. If you were going to do that, like dry brush the green, I would do it before doing all the horns and everything. It'll be fine. And look, some people get some incredible results with dry brushing. I'm not one of those people. I, have followed all the guides and that, but my dry brushing on bigger things still ends up very chalky. Even when, you use the moistened brush and all those stuff. that everyone recommends. I just can't get it right. But would be a good model if you wanted to work on your dry brushing. This could be a good one to do it on. Let's just put a bit more here. So we definitely want some on here. Yep, that would just along here would be catching the light, I think. Not a lot. I don't want to go very far down, but it's facing upwards enough that we want to pick it. And then that's going to need a little bit of glazing. So let's go back to our glaze consistency paint here. And then just glaze up to it. You could do this with blending too. I often will normally do this with wet blending instead, but I don't have any angel green on my palette right now, so we'll just glaze it to thin it out, or just smoothen it out. We'll come back to that in a bit once it's had a chance to dry and probably hit it again. As I've talked about a lot with this model, I'm just working in sections. So I'm doing this arm first and we'll move down and then we'll pick another section. Just work around it. It's too big to jump back and forth because you will miss stuff. Even in sections, I'm working in sections. So like I did the whole hand first, now I'm doing the forearm part. And then I'll do like the shoulder here. Yeah, we want to go a little bit further down here. Just between here and here. Not too far down. Alright, next we move on, so we'll do his, what's this, bicep? I think it's called bicep. I don't know muscle groups and stuff very well. Which is weird considering how many muscles I've torn over the years. But you don't need to know what they're named to tear them. That line along there, not happy with that. This is why I hate building models. There's always something you miss. I just don't enjoy the building process. I just want to paint. to the smaller brush for this part. Lots of wrinkles here. Alrighty. So that's the arm done. You really see the difference between like the arm and the rest of the body. Wow. He's snoring so loud, I hope you guys can't hear that. But yeah, the arm that's highlighted and the rest of the body, there's a big difference there. I always sort of like when you've got a moment in the paint where you can like look at the two sort of stages side by side and be like, it is making a difference. It is. I do believe. Trust the process and all that fun stuff. What next? What section should we do next? I guess this is the next part that's most upright. What is on that? Must have got, yeah, I got some wash pulled on there somehow. That's a really weird spot for it to pull. I don't know how I did that, but that's fine. We'll fix that later. So this is the next part that's most upright. So I think I'm going to work on that now. So let's get to it. So obviously this big rounded part, it's all pretty well going to be. I know there's a recess there, but like the light would be coming down onto it. That recess wouldn't actually be in a shadow. And you could make the same argument for these pockmark spots, but I am going to try to avoid them. Just because I think it'll look like you want that texture to show, right? The texture gives the model a lot of nice character, so we do want that to show. And if we just paint it the same color, then it's not going to, so just try to avoid them. I wouldn't worry too much if you get some in, because it is really easy to come back with the shade in the future and just like drip it into those spots if you're worried about it. Now this one here I feel is deeper and like it's sort of creasing. This is folding over it, so we're going to try to leave that recess there. But this part would be picking out the sun or the light, whatever the light source happens to be in his weird demonic world that he's from. Pretty much all of this can be highlighted. Once again, trying to avoid these little pock marks. Feels like I'm repeating myself a lot, but what else is there to say until someone starts chatting? If someone chats, I can have other conversations rather than talking to myself. But if people want to lurk, that is also fine. Lurking is fine. Let's just... Oh, almost went into the pockmark there. Let's avoid that. Looking good. Now I'm not worrying too much, so you can see it's a little bit patchy, but I'm not worried too much about that because it's gonna be like it's a beat up battle damaged giant demon, right? So I feel like even its armor plates and that wouldn't be too smooth. And when I'm doing later layers, it's gonna smoothen out anyway. So I wouldn't be too worried about being perfect with your smoothness on the actual layers. I do want to try make sure the transitions are smoother though, so that's why I do stop and do some glazing. Another part I'm a little bit worried about how it's going to turn out later is the part that goes on his back here. I've not decided how I'm painting that yet. So right now I'm just going to highlight all this like I normally would, but there's a chance I do come back and change like this section, and maybe do some OSL or whatever, depending on how I end up painting the weird vortexy part that goes on his back. But we'll have to wait and see. It's one of the dangers of like coming into a project like this and not having every part sort of thought out, which is something I do a lot, unfortunately. Not really unfortunately, I guess it's part of my process. I do like, it's easier to make decisions once you start seeing the colours on the models, right? Like, you can come in with a plan and idea on all the colours you want to do, then you start getting colours on the models and you're like, you know what, that one, I don't think that one will work as well. And you change your mind or whatever. But that's part of the fun of this. It's like it's almost two different feelings, right? When you go into a project and you've got a mental image of exactly how you want it to happen, and like you hit that mental image, and it comes out exactly like you pictured it. It's an awesome feeling. But I also think when you go into a project without like a real image, you're just like, I just want it to look cool, and you come out and you're really happy with how it looks in the end. I think that's an awesome feeling too. I think they're both sort of, they're both the sort of highs you're chasing when you're painting, right? The interesting thing is when I do my video on this and do the times, because this step by itself is going to take a while. How long is this? This has been going almost 30 minutes, and I've done that part. Although the next, like, this is the longest step of highlighting the green. It always is when you're just establishing it and all that. Once it's established, the next steps, like the next layers, are really easy. You just sort of come in, you've already got it established, so you're just hitting smaller areas, you know where you're hitting. There's no real decision making behind it. You've made all the decisions in this step. Probably shouldn't have gone too as deep in there, because that would be shaded by that horn, I think. Well, that's okay. almost finish this section, and then we'll pick another section to work on. Where's that go down? I think around there. Come up from that. So that is, these parts are starting to face downwards a bit, so we need to be a bit more careful how far down we go. Just picking it all out. Okay. Now, none of this, right, yeah, that's all going to be shadowed along the side there, so we'll ignore that. This here though, let's pick this out a bit more. And that's facing upwards, so we'll join those parts up. I think that's that section finished. Look at that. So let's compare. Can I get a decent camera angle here? So you got, yeah. So the left is highlighted and the right is not. Obviously it's only one layer of highlights, but you can see the difference it makes, right? Like it's a lot more definition, and you're sort of starting to get it to force the light to go where you want it, sort of thing, or the force it to look like the light's where you want it hitting. It's a nice difference. Especially, it's going to take ages, right? It does, because it's a big model, but it's going to be, this will be one of 3 of the centerpiece models on my army, as my army currently stands, so it's worth it. Alright, you want your big models. I mean, the big models, when it comes to like trying to win, you know, best painted or whatever, you're almost using the same sort of tricks with your army composition as you do with your painting, right? The big models are what draws the eye of the judges and stuff. So that's where you want to put a lot of sort of the eye-catching detail and the extra work, because that's what the eye is drawn to, so that's where you want to put the effort in. So it's like when you're painting a character, you put the effort into sort of the face and the head, shoulder, and, you know, upper torso sort of thing, because that's where the eye is drawn. So if you're painting an army and you want to sort of be in the running for best painted, with your big models, make sure you give them some extra time, because that's where the judges are looking. They definitely will look at your smaller stuff, so like your infantry and that, so you do need to give them the effort too. But if your big models don't catch their eye and draw their attention, they're probably not even going to take the time to stop and look at your smaller stuff. So take the time with your big guys, give them that extra time and effort, and force the judges to stop and look at your armies. I think I'm going to go down the leg here, I reckon. Lots of people coming in and out and having a look. No one stopping to chat though. Yeah, so we'll go down to the tail and then down the leg. Actually, this is the first highlight, so the leg's going to get a decent amount of this. Let's try. Oh god, the shakes are starting. Oh no. Make the shakes stop. I need to They do something about that chat box. I've seen people on their streams have the chat box like it's clear, and just the text shows up, because right now it's just a black box on my screen because no one's chatting. But I did a stream ages ago where I didn't have the chat on stream, and I was responding to people's questions and comments in the chat, like that people were asking in chat. It just looked weird, like it was a one-sided conversation that was on my VOD. I was like, I need to have the chat on stream, but now it's just a black box. I need to find out how people do it, like as a clear box, so it's not just a black box on my screen right now on the stream. I think that's as far down as we go. I do want to put a little bit more. Get a bit more of that on there. Add some water to it all. So all this is showing. Alright, I might stop it and pick it up again there. Just a little bit there. And then, now you'd be right in saying that a lot of this leg is going to be in shadow. Oops. Especially that bit there, but there's a mistake there that I'm going to touch up. And I can't be bothered breaking out Angel Green to do it. So, yeah, so a lot of this leg is in shadow, but I still want to get some highlighting on it. Even if it's just, it will just be this layer of highlight for most of this leg, right? But it just helps with that definition a bit. Gonna have to do a little bit of glazing here. Tidy up some of these transitions a bit. Let's finish. Bring you in from there. Ow. Stupid spike stabbing me. Before we go any further, let's just do a little bit of glazing here, just to smoothen out those transitions a bit. It's a bit of a jump. Not too bad, because I am using fairly thin paint. But I'd like to just smoothen it a little bit. Actually, that we don't want to smooth it out. Let's line that across better. In there, we want to smoothen it out a bit though. Alright, let's just smoothen that bit there out. That's a bit much paint on brush for the glazing. Looks a bit better. Alright, I am going to, just this kneecap is going to get some highlighting too. Yes, it's in the shadow and it probably shouldn't, but this is more sort of giving it definition than highlighting, because this will be the only highlight I do here, but it's about just defining these raised parts a bit, making the wrinkles a bit deeper. Just sort of the texture more than anything is what we're building here. And I know you can't see what I'm doing here. I'm sorry, but I'm not sure how to get a camera angle where you can with the way this model looks. But that, you can't really see it, but you can sort of see what I did there. Just giving it that the texture as you'd expect it to have. Well, I've got the smaller brush. We'll just do this part here. We'll go back to the bigger brush for a minute, but we're going to need the smaller brush again in it shortly. So this part here is going to be highlighted because like it's sort of sticking out to the side there, so the sun would definitely, light would definitely hit that. Don't go too far down though. This is a spot we're going to need to glaze again. Oh, I can go further down than I thought actually. Yep. Let's just tidy this up here. And then we'll do steal some of that paint, bring it to our little glaze spot. And just tidy that up a bit. And here, tidy that one up a bit. Smoothing it out. Alrighty. I did, so I airbrushed the base coats, so the green and the tan I airbrushed. And then I'm not good with the airbrush, so I had to tidy up at the joints sort of thing. And then the rest has all been brush. Yeah, I'm not great at the airbrush. I just used it to basically block in the two main colours of the green and the tan, and then did all the rest of the highlighting and everything myself with brush, and that way too much paint on that brush. But yeah, thank you. I'm pretty happy with how it's coming out. Still a whole lot of work to do on him, but once he's done, as long as I keep being patient and taking my time with it all, gonna be a pretty awesome centerpiece model, I think. What's on your desk at the moment? What are you working on? Any projects? Always something on our desks, right? Keltroid Gaming. You have your own YouTube channel? Is that a YouTube channel name? I think we're done there. Let's just do the tail quick. Tail's going to be fairly easy. Yeah. Tyranids and Marines are they're great options for getting in, just practicing painting, right? You know, the Marines are very are great for like learning to sort of highlight your curves and that sort of thing. And Tyranids give you like the different texture to practice on. I think they're both. I think Tyranid Marine Starter Box was really good choice for learning. Just learning to paint. I don't play either of those armies, but so are you looking at playing either Nids or Marines, or you just practicing painting at the moment? No, I mean that's good. Yeah, you've got great models for practicing. Snickrot's a cool model. One of my mates plays Orcs, and I actually painted a Badrock for him. He got his hands on one of the old Badrock models, and I got to paint that for him for. Yeah, I painted it for him for Christmas last year, I reckon. But Orcs have some cool models. I mean, really, all the armies have cool models, right? Like, it just really depends on what your preference is aesthetic-wise. You sit there. How are we looking? Alrighty. I like the bottom tail. Yeah. Yeah, you will quickly, if you don't have a lot of willpower, you're quickly going to end up with a backlog of like just so much grey plastic, because you're always like, oh my god, this model's awesome, I want it, I'm going to paint it. And you do that too many times without actually getting everything painted, and suddenly you just have cupboards or shelves of models that you've bought because, oh my god, I'm going to paint that, that looks awesome. Yeah. I've actually gotten a lot better at it. These days, I sort of often can restrain myself from buying new stuff until I've got stuff painted. That's why I have a Zinch Demon Force that's mostly painted. I have my Votan, which has over 1,000 points painted now. And this is for my Thousand Suns, which by early January I should have 1,000 points painted. If not, I've failed, because that's when my mates that I'm doing the slow grow thing with are catching up. But yeah, it's so easy to fall into the... Yeah, you need to, right? Like, it's just... You need to set yourself boundaries on what you're allowed to buy and how often or when or anything like that. Otherwise, you end up like one of my mates that has, I think, every army, or very close to it, and a lot of them are still in their boxes, not put together and that. Budgie, if you're watching this VOD later, I am talking about you, and I am calling you out on stream. I love painting dwarf beards. My favourite dwarf beard to paint is white with purple shadows. I don't know if you've seen my Rune Lord video, but one, it's possibly one of the best models from Games Workshop ever. But two, I was so happy with how his beard came out. Are you? So are you doing hammerers or iron breakers, that sort of trim? It's really hard, right? There's trim's one of those things where it really is just brush control. But the tricks with brush control is a lot of it's to do with direction and that sort of thing. What do I have here in my drawers? Here's something that has a lot of trim. So, this has one of my Thousand Suns has a whole lot of trim, right? So when you're working on it, you a lot of it's about direction. So most painters find it's most comfortable to paint towards them, bring their brushing down. Where I find personally I can paint away from myself better. And then a lot of the time with trim, it's sort of standing out a little bit, so you can just run your brush along it, and it won't go down into there. So if any of the trim standing out, try just running your brush along it like that. Way easier than trying to do it this way, because doing it that way, one slip and your brush is onto the part you don't want to trim. Far easier. But yeah, so the main thing is see if you can find which direction is most comfortable for you when you're painting, is if it's away from you or towards you. And that's going to make a big difference on your actual brush control for painting the trim. Hope that helps. We need a bit more green on my palette though. Yeah, trim is nightmare. I love the way my Thousand Suns are looking, but it took me for my rubric marines. I did a video testing 2 ways to paint the rubrics, and they took me roughly 4 hours per model, and they're the your standard battle line. So my Thousand Suns army is taking a long time to paint. Like just the battle line, I think to get to 2,000 points, if I remember right, I need 30, either 25 or 30. But you're looking at about 120 hours of just to do the battle line, and then you got big guy like this and Magnus and that sort of thing. No worries, Keltrad. I hope that helped. Or Arona, sorry, wrong person. Anyway, hope that helps, because yeah, trim's hard. It's one of those things that there's not a lot of cheat ways to do it. The rubric video I did was basically I tried 2 different ways that people, because it has so much trim, and there's sort of 2 ways people suggest painting them to make the trim easier. I don't know if that video would necessarily help in regards to painting dwarf trim, because I feel like the dwarf trim isn't there's not as much dwarf trim on them, other than say the hammerers and probably even the iron drakes and iron breakers, but like your standard dwarfs don't have that much trim overall. You know what, that should be painted, that should be painted, and in there should be painted. Can I get my brush in there? What colour scheme are you doing your dwarfs? I am a big fan of dwarfs, and I reckon close to half my videos on my channel are doing painting dwarfs. Be very close to half of them. Guess it depends if you count Votan as well. You count Votan, then well over half my videos are dwarfs. If you don't count Votan, then I reckon close to half my videos are old world dwarfs. Give me a minute. I should answer back because she's asking me if I want to FaceTime, and I probably can't right now. Green and yellow's a solid colour combination. And I say this being an Australian whose sporting colours are all green and yellow. Our national sporting colours. So, you obviously get a tick from me. What am I doing? Not loaded my brush up quite so much. Here we go. Okay, here we go. Okay, let's establish this here. Work out what I'm working on here. Losing track of what I'm doing because Beck's messaging me. What are you doing for like hammerers and iron drakes and iron breakers that are like, you know, all the metallic armor? Are you going with colored metal, or are you just doing them sort of metal? That was something I went back and forth on mine. I was like, do I want to give them like painted armor, I guess, basically, to make them match the rest of my army's color scheme better, or do I make them just metal? In the end, I decided to go just metal, but I feel like the argument is made either way, right? There's no right or wrong on that. I'm always sort of curious at which way people decide to go for it. That's fair. You can also always go the if you want like a colored metallic, the contrast paint over a metal look. That always works well too. So you could do, although I guess if you did yellow over a metallic, it's just going to look gold, but you could do it with your green. Do like a bright, like a shining silver or whatever style, or mithril silver or something like that, and then your green over the top, and you'll get like a nice metallic green afterwards. Oh, awesome. Thanks a lot for subscribing, Keltrod, and yeah, I look forward to keeping you up next time. Check out some of my videos if you haven't. There's a few there that might help with your painting your Space Marines and that. Okay. Let's just do a little bit here. Not a lot. And dirt. I'm going to want to do a little bit on that knee pad, but let's keep with the bigger brush for the moment. And if anyone's wondering why I keep standing it down, it's so I can see where to highlight. And one of the easiest ways to work out where to highlight is to just sit it and see where the light's coming down on. Means you don't really have to think about it all that much. Green contrast I'd recommend. Give me a minute and I'll actually have a look at my greens. It's hard to it might actually be a bit hard to recommend, depending on what green you're already doing, because you're obviously going to want to try and match it. But I do have a fair few contrast paints here, but I can never think of their name. What do I have here? So here's two. So the Dark Angels green is very, ignore how dusty these are. The Dark Angels green is almost like a bluish green, which is weird because the Dark Angels green non-contrast is more like this Angels green. Whereas the Orc Flesh is pretty close, if I remember right, to like the Angels green. So this darker green here, that comes out pretty close to that. I don't have a lighter green contrast to show, I don't think. But if you're going like a darker green, then try the Orc Flesh, and see how that goes. I wouldn't go Angel green. Like I said, it's sort of a more of a bluish green, and I'm actually not a fan of it in the contrast. Which is a shame because Angel Green, Dark Angel Green is one of like the better greens outside of the contrast range. But for some reason, in the contrast range, it's very different. And that's only contrast. I don't know if you use Army Paint or Speed Paint. I actually have never used Army Paint or Speed Paint. I've heard it behaves differently than contrast, and it is a bit weird that I use like every other paint I use is Army Painter except I use contrast. But that's just because when the contrast range first came out, which was like the first of the Speed Paint contrast ranges, I just bought the whole set. And since I did that, thought it would be a bit stupid to then do that also when the Speed Paint range came out. Yeah, I mean, you can always just, if you're not sure, do it on a piece of sprue. Like, spray the sprue with whatever your normal undercoat is, your primer. Hit a part of it with silver, and then do the contrast over the top of it and just see how it comes out. That's how I often test colours, like when I'm doing weird stuff like that. Because the sprue's the same plastic, so it works well. And if you're using contrast, I normally try to do it over a part of the sprue that has like the lettering or the writing. Because obviously contrast reacts very differently with texture than it does with on smooth stuff. So it's better to try to do it on texture, something textured. If you're testing it. But if you want an idea on how it looks, I did do similar with a contrast paint over silver with Flesh Terror's Red in... Oh, what dwarfs did I do it on? I did it on my Rune Lord, which was when I found the recipe. I think I did it on my Iron Drake, sorry. Don't know if I did it on my Hammerers or not. But yeah, it won't. Obviously, it's not going to be the same color, but you'll get an idea on the effect it gives, how it gives like a colored metallic. Let's just gently. Alright, we're coming along. Most of it's done. So we have this section, that arm, and then the ugly tentacles. And we'll have finished these highlight, the green. Oh, hang on, I'm not happy with that. There's a part there I want to fix up. That needs a bit more. Yeah. So yeah, it's the same thing, right? If you saw what I did in the Iron Drake video, same thing. It'll just, if you're using like a green, it'll come out sort of greeny. So what I was originally doing was trying to get a like a metallic red. That was my original plan, and I talk about it in the Rune Lord video. But I should have used like Baal red or something instead. The Flesh Terror's red that I used just went more of like a browny color or whatever. But in the end, I really liked it, so I kept it and just went with it. And it's always fun when, you know, a mistake ends up being cool and you keep it. Alright, let's do this section here now. So we'll start from the back. Actually, I'm going to start from the front and work my way back, just because I find that easier. So now I do need to remember that this part is like sort of facing more downwards. So I don't want to go as far down as I did on the other side. But we still want our highlights. Make sure we're getting our definition and texture. I mean, yeah, it'll happen. Like, And then, of course, you'll have the mistakes that ruin a model, and you go, why do I ever try experimenting? But these are things that happen to all of us. Oh no, did I just do that? I did just do that. But yeah, I really think, I mean, the best way to learn when you're painting is to experiment. Like, you know, until I decided to experiment and try highlighting, I had no idea how to do highlighting. You know, until you try dry brushing, you don't know how to do dry brushing. Like, it just, you need to just experiment and sort of go into it knowing that you're probably going to mess up and make a mistake, and you might have to completely start the model again, but that's okay, because the next time you'll probably get it right, and if not, well, you'll get it right the next time. Sooner or later, you're going to get it right, and it's going to be great, and once you get the technique working, it's a new technique in your arsenal, and you'll always be able to pull it out when you want to. So yeah, experiment. I always think it's worth it. In fact, one of the things I always try to do when I start a new army, I pick a technique that, like, I'm maybe not confident with, I don't, you know, or even something I've not tried before or whatever. I just try to pick a new technique and make sure and include that technique in the entire army. And yeah, it's by the time you finish painting an army, or even like a couple of units of the army, you're suddenly way better at that technique. Like, it starts feeling natural and that. And then even if you don't use that technique again for like months or a year or whatever, because you did it so much, you can just pull it out again, right? Like, so my dwarfs were using a universal shadow, so that's why they were only purple for the shadows. Because that was the technique I'd seen other YouTubers use. So like Ninjon is the main one. I remember seeing it used. I think Eons of Battle did it as well a few times. But yeah, I saw them do it. I'm like, oh, that's a cool technique. Something fun, something I haven't done before. And yeah, I think it worked out well with my dwarves. It did create a few frustrations that you need to work around. But yeah, it's not, I don't think it's something I'd do for another like full army again. But now that I've done it, I can always bring it out if I'm painting like a display piece or something like that, and I want to set that sort of tone. Yeah, then that's sort of the fun of doing that sort of stuff. Yeah, orcs are amazing for experimenting, right? Like, if you mess something up on an orc paint job, you can be like, what do you mean? It's not messed up. That's how orcs are. Yeah. It's funny, I don't know if you were in the stream earlier when I was talking about it, but I painted Badrock for a mate. He plays orcs in 40k, and I painted Badrock for him, I think for Christmas last year. And like, normally when you paint something, or when I paint something for a friend, I feel a bit of pressure, right? It's their model, it's their army. You don't want to screw it up. But like, I didn't feel that with Badrock, because I'm like, it's an orc. It doesn't really matter what I do here. Like, obviously I still painted it, like, you know, to a good level and to like the best of my ability, but it's an orc. If I screw up, I can just be like, well, what do you think? It's an orc. Of course it's got a random stripe of red across its skin. Well, you know, whatever. But yeah, orcs are fun. They give you like so much freedom when it comes to not just the painting, but the hobbying as well, right? The modeling and the kit bashing, and one of my first games when I got into like this hobby as a whole was Gorka Morka, which I don't know if you, a lot of people probably don't know that game, but it was basically like tribes of orcs fighting over a desert world in like the 40k universe, and like the kit bashing and just the fun of like just making these weird guys, because your orc could like lose his arm and get it replaced with like a metal hook and things like that, right? So you just have fun kit bashing this as these, as your troops and your characters have all these horrible things happen to them. You'd start trying to kit bash models to represent them more accurately and all that, and you'd change their paint scheme and all this. And I think that had a big impact on me sort of falling in love and staying with the hobby, because it's like, yeah, orcs just have so much character to them. How long you been in the hobby? So you said you got dwarfs. Are you only old world player, or do you play 40k and AOS, or? Cool. What armies do you play 40k AOS? Obviously, I assume one of them would be orcs, since we just had that conversation. But what else do you play? That's fair. I haven't played AOS since I think second edition. That was what I originally built my Demons of Zinch for. Uh, but yeah, I played AOS then. Now I'm sort of more 40k. I run pure Zinch demons for my demons. I've got Votan and working on my Thousand Suns now. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Zinch and dwarfs. So like, out of the four armies I have, they're all either Zinch or they're dwarfs. Weird, but um, yeah, I've been looking at AOS with fourth and wondering if I should give it another shot since I have my demons there. You know what I mean? But I haven't yet. I already find it hard enough to find time to play the two games I'm playing. Feels like there's never enough time for games. What are slaves like? They got a really big change recently, didn't they? Like a new. Because I know 4th came out, and I think there was big releases for Slaves just before 4th or just after 4th. Or am I being delusional and remembering things wrong, which is also a possibility. Yeah, because I feel like I was looking at like cavalry models for them or something that looked really cool, and was one of those moments where I thought I really want to buy these to paint them and had to stop myself. Palette's drying out. Fix that in a minute. That's fair. It's always hard to find time for games, unfortunately. But it's one of the reasons why I enjoy painting so much, I think. I get to still participate in the hobby while I'm at home by myself and don't need a friend to play with when I'm painting. But it is nice to have people to chat with when I'm painting. So I appreciate you hanging around in the stream. Honestly, I actually feel like for me, painting is more of the hobby than playing. Like when I'm really in a painting mood, I'll paint, 20, 30 hours in a week, right? On average, I usually do probably 10 hours a week painting. Whereas like when it comes to playing, I get, if I'm lucky, I get 2 games in a month. Usually it's around 1. But like the amount of time I put into painting and that rather over actually getting to play, like I feel like the hobby's more I paint and then occasionally I get to play with what I painted, rather than I'm painting to play. Which is fair, because I actually really enjoy painting and it is fun and very relaxing. And with my YouTube channel, I get to share that passion with other people now, which is also really quite rewarding. Yeah, it's also really rewarding when like you haven't managed to play a game with a mate for a couple of months or whatever, and then you catch up with that mate and you've just got so many new models painted and you pull them out and your mates are all like, oh my god, I need to look at them. It's cool. Because why else would you paint if not for the ego boost? I think I need to change brushes again. I also think it's one of the reasons why, like, you know, I sometimes get comments on my videos that how long I spend on a model is too long or whatever. And it's like, I don't know, I feel like when painting's the main part of the hobby that you get to interact with, spending, you know, 2 hours, 4 hours, whatever it is on a model, I don't think it's that long. I think it's, yeah. But that's another thing that's great about the hobby is we each get to decide how much time we put into our models. If I want to put 4 hours into my models, I can do that and get the results for it. And if I only want to put an hour into my model, I can do that and I'll get the results for that. You know what I mean? Like, we each decide what results we want to get and how much time we want to put into it. And what we're happy with. I think that's actually pretty cool. Oh. I think I need to blue tack this in while I do this part. Get an idea on why is that rock? That's not supposed to rock. Do I need to blue tack it? I don't think I need to. I think I just need to remember that that part's the bottom. As long as I remember that's the bottom, I should be okay. Alright, everything is done right. Oh, how about that there? Does any of that need to be highlighted? I don't think so. I think it's all in shadow. Yeah, I'll do a little bit of highlighting there. Yeah, right. Like you decide how long to spend. And a gyro bobber's a great example, right? That's going to be a centerpiece for your army, especially in dwarfs that don't have centerpiece models, right? You got like the king on shield bearers, and then you've got your war machines, and the gyro bomber. The gyro bomber specifically, like the gyrocopters stand out, but the gyro bomber is even bigger and really stands out nicely. Yeah. Yeah, I know. You know, I have mates that obviously they're in the hobby for to play more than to paint, right? Which absolutely fine, nothing wrong with that. But yeah, some of them like to give me a bit of ribbon about how much time I spend on individual models to paint. And it's like, I get it, like, but I am very happy with how my armies look when I put them down. And I think that's the most important thing. I also don't think, unless you're like aiming to paint for a competition or, you know, you want to compete for best painted or whatever, like, I don't think there's such a thing as too short a time either. There's a reason a lot of you know, videos on slap chop and, you know, speed painting methods do really well, is because that's a lot of people want that, right? A lot of people are in the hobby to play. They don't want to paint. They don't, you know, they want nice painted armies, but they don't want to spend 300 hours getting an army painted. And that's totally understandable too, right? So if you can get a nice looking army done in 10 or 15 minutes per model, I think there's nothing wrong with that either, right? Like, it's all, we all interact with the hobby in our own ways. Alrighty, let's work on these tentacles. Okay, that part is the bottom, so let's remember that. Let's deal with this pooling part here, even though I'm pretty sure that'll be in in the recess, so it'll be glued and you'll never see that. do think I'm never actually going to do like speed painting videos. It's just not my style of painting. I like taking my time. I like putting that bit of extra effort in. And a big part of it's ego, right? Like, I recognize that I have an ego when it comes to my painting. I go to an event and I know I expect to be at least in the running or in the conversation for best painted, and I always am. But because of that, I feel like I wouldn't be happy if I went to an event with like a speed painted army that isn't going to be in that conversation, because painting's such a big part of the hobby for me. To go with like a rushed army that's not gonna not have a chance, just I don't know, it's not me. Can't bring myself to do that. Too much of an ego with my painting. I'm just picking individual tentacles and working on them one tentacle at a time, because otherwise I will miss parts. My paint's drying out a bit. See how it's good? You can see how it's like starting to leave brush marks. That means the paint's starting to dry out a bit. Whether that's drying out in your brush or on your palette, either way, you want to make sure just clean your brush out, add a bit more water to the paint on your palette. Stop that happening. Yeah, I agree. I've got friends that speed paint and they get some nice results, but yeah, I like looking at a model and knowing that, you've just put that extra effort in. And like, it's not even like I don't. It's not that I have my. Oh, how to word it? English is hard. Yeah, I sort of have my own level, and I think we all do, of what I consider speed painting, right? With my dwarfs, I was knocking them out, less than an hour and a half per model. And to me, that was fast, right? That's a good rate to get an army done. And I was happy with that. And like, to me, that was speed painting. As much as it's not, by no objective standard is that speed painting. For me and for the way I paint, that was speed painting, right? Um, and I think you just have to find that level. And it's going to be different for every army that you do too. Like my dwarfs, I knew that there's going to be a lot of models to paint, right? Old World just has a lot of models in their armies. Just a unit of warriors can be unit like 20 or whatever. So like I know there's going to be a lot of models to paint. So rather than like say the 2 hours a model, which was my aim for the Votan, I dropped it down to an hour and a half per model. Whereas my Thousand Suns, I've come into them knowing that they're going to be, they're going to take a long time no matter what, because of the amount of trim they have, right? They're just, no one can paint Thousand Suns fast. It's just not and doing the trim in that. Like I've seen people doing like statue Thousand Suns or Ghostly Thousand Suns where they just completely ignore the trim and don't paint it. That you can do fast, but if you're painting the trim in that, you're never going to paint Thousand Suns fast. So I made the decision that my Thousand Suns army is going to be my new Ego army, where I spend far too long painting all the models, so I can drop it on the tabletop and just have my head explode because it lets my ego get too big. But yeah, and every army you sort of, I do it consciously where I sit down and think about it, but I think we all do it unconsciously to a certain extent, where we go decide how much time and how much effort the army or even the individual models are worth, how long you're willing to put onto it. Yeah. And it's sort of interesting what individual people think is a fast army or a fast unit or a fast model or whatever compared to others, right? When I say hour and a half, hour and 15, hour and a half, whatever it was for my dwarves, was me painting quick. People that knock models out in 10, 15 minutes per model look at me like I'm insane. But it's quick for me. Another interesting thing I've noticed, which is only tangentially related, it's not really related. The best painters I know, like guys that paint better than me, put out incredible models, like to the level of, Squidmar or Ninjon or whatever. People like that never have armies finished because they spend 40 hours on a single model and then they're just not interested in doing that for an army. So it's like I sort of fall in the middle ground where I get armies finished, but I spend a decent amount of time per model too. It's interesting. I know one guy that he's never entered any painting competitions, but if he did, he'd definitely be in the running to win. But he's never finished an army. I don't even think he's ever finished a full unit. He paints some incredible models. That one's done, so it's this one. No, it's not that one. That one's done too. So it's this one at the bottom. Is it? Yeah. And then the middle one. I need to work out what I'm doing for this saliva stuff too. No idea how I'm going to paint that yet. Oh, my hand needs to stop. There we go. Alright, how's that looking? Let's put that with that. Get in there. I think I got that angle slightly wrong. Because that wasn't... yeah, it's not dead straight, it's that way. So, need my brush back. Yeah. Okay, it wasn't... So, we want to do a bit more on this one. Oops. Bit awkward that angle, but if I can establish it, then I can pull it off and have a better look at it. Well, there, you're okay. So it's only really that one tentacle that needed to be touched up, so let's just give him a bit more, because I had the angle slightly off. Alright, let's... The first layer of green highlights done. If I can get that to sit in there properly. Why are you being shit? There we go. Coming along nicely. How long did that take? Well, we went streaming an hour and 45 minutes. Yeah, that took a while. Well, I don't feel like doing... I'm up to doing the next screen. I don't want to do any other colour yet. I guess I could do the purple, but I'm going to leave that. So, I think I'm going to call it there. Take a break. And go work out what I'm doing for dinner, because I don't think I have any meat defrosted yet. Thank you for hanging out. So, favourite model, RuneSmith is definitely my favourite model. Favourite unit? Game, like playing, I really enjoy the Iron Drakes. I think they're great. Sort of more like lore story wise, I love just any Lord on Shield Bearers. I think it's awesome. Well, yeah. Anyway, thank you for hanging out and chatting, Arona. I hope next time I stream, I'll catch you then. And I hope it's helped and any of the advice I've given has been good for you. But yeah, I'm going to call it there and hope you have a good day.